Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Lawrence Bardo from Off-Season Sports and Physical Therapy, and we're here in beautiful Warren, Vermont at Sugarbush Resort. And I have Tom Licciardello here with me. Tom's been a patient of mine on and off over the years, and he's a very athletic person, very driven person, and so I felt the need to interview him because he has a very interesting story. So Tom, tell us a little bit of how you got into running and what other sports you've played throughout your life.
So the running was actually a result of being convinced that I had to join the wrestling team back when I was in high school. I was a scrawny little kid, and I had a great guidance counselor who managed to finagle me into wrestling, and my wrestling coach was also the track coach. So at the end of the wrestling season, he said, "You're doing track." I ended up being the 2-miler, go figure.
Nice.
And then at the end of track season in the fall, he said, "You're going out for cross country." And I said, "I don't want to run across the country." He said, "No, it's cross country. It's a fun thing to do, and you got to get in shape for wrestling." And
Right.
so that kind of got me into the whole running gig. But it wasn't until years later that wrestling became my big sport. And but years later, I realized I was getting a little out of shape, so I started riding my bike. I bumped into a friend who was out for a run with a friend of his, and they were miles away from the house, about 3 miles. And I thought that was insane.
Right, yeah.
And I asked him what the heck he was doing. He said, "We're getting ready to run a marathon." And I said, "That sounds like a doping thing." And he said, "Well, if you divide the number of miles you ride a bike by 3, that's an equivalent run." I said, "Well, how far's a marathon?" And he said, 26.2 miles. Well, having just finished my first century ride, 100 miles, I thought, "Oh, great, I could do that."
Just like that. That's
So,
it.
like many of my adventures in life, they weren't really well thought out, and I decided I was going to run a marathon. And,
Nice.
so I started running in the middle of July. August 15th, I ran my first 10-mile race. First race was a 10-mile race. It was August 15th was my anniversary, my wedding anniversary.
Okay.
My wife was pregnant with our second daughter, and I wouldn't let her go to the race because it was 105 degrees.
Yeah, wicked hot. Wow.
Yeah, so I ran the race, nearly died but didn't. And on December 7th of that year, I ran my first marathon and qualified for Boston. Promised my wife I was only going to do it once. And when I get to the finish line, I met her there and I said, "Oh, Linny, you wouldn't believe how wonderful this was. And next year I know I can do better." So it kind of led to doing a few more of them. So, yeah.
Cool. I know you've had your knee replaced. So over the years, just from being an athlete, you'd hurt your knee, and the wear and tear of it had worn it down to the point of bone on bone. And so what was it like getting your knee replaced, and how did that help you get your athletic life back?
So after, there was actually an injury to my knee. It wasn't necessarily from running, but the injury was exacerbated by the running, of course. So finally I got to the point where my running was horrible. I used to be a fairly decent runner, and I got to the point where I was crawling along, and I felt like I was losing my athletic life, and it was so important. Running was one of the things that defined me. Running, skiing, triathlons, obstacle course races, those were the very important components of my life, and I watched them going away. And then last winter, I was coming up here to go skiing with a good friend of mine who knows a little bit about this stuff, this guy. And I was moaning about my knee.
You were moaning about your knee. Yes, you were.
And Larry's pulled me out of the fire a number of times, but I said, it's really getting bad. I don't know how much longer I can hold out without getting a knee replacement. But if I do that, I'm not going to be able to run, I'm not going to be able to cycle, I'm not going to be able to ski, I'm not going to be able to do any of the things I love. And Larry said, "Yeah, not true."
Yeah, false.
So as a result, he introduced me to the conformist knee, which is the latest technology.
One of our favorites.
And I had total knee replacement done in May of this year. And happy to report I'm back to running and skiing my brains out, which we did today.
Yes, I took a few hard tumbles myself.
Yeah, Larry was probably going to have his knee replaced.
Yeah.
And so I'm back to skiing pretty hard, and skiing in the moguls, and it was my 3rd day skiing today out of the 26 days I've skied this winter. And the good news is I can turn left without crying.
Yes, that's right.
So it's really been a miraculous thing to be able to do that.
Cool.
Alexa, stop.
It's our food timer for dinner. It's almost dinner time. So throughout the injury cycle, How did you stay positive? How did you stay motivated? Because I know a lot of my patients have a hard time doing that. And your injury cycle is quite long over the years, on and off. So how did you stay positive and motivated to do that?
Yeah, this knee thing goes all the way back to 2006. So I really spent a lot of years suffering. And as I watched my capabilities diminish, I still had the strength, but the mobility issue was really tough to deal with. And I'd like to say that I was always up and feeling like, it's still heroic that I'm doing all this stuff. But honestly, it really began to get me very depressed.
Yeah.
So getting to the point where you and I explored every other solution,
Right,
I think
I
we emptied your knowledge bucket of things to do other than a knee replacement. And to have that done and have it be successful, I really feel like I have my life back, and that's
awesome.
It's huge.
Cool. So how have you adopted your life going forward throughout the various medical conditions you've had in your life?
So even though having a knee replacement is a pretty big deal, it's not the biggest deal that I've had. I share a common issue with a good friend of mine, David Gilroy, who's the race director of the Boston Marathon. He and I both have had cardiac issues.
Sure.
And we can both now say with a great deal of authority that being fit and being healthy are two separate things. And in December of 2015, I had sextuple bypass surgery.
Wow.
Which is, yeah, that's what I said too.
Yeah, because you're a very fit individual.
Yeah, and I always prided myself on the level of fitness and doing the right thing, and my impression was that I'd live to 100
Right.
and something, and that I'd always have this incredible health history. Well, not so much. The good news is that my cardiologist, who is the co-medical director of the Boston Marathon, Dr. Aaron Bagish, an amazing guy. I'm done. He said I have no more cardiac issues. I'm fully fixed.
Cool.
And but it has led in the last 3 months to a very substantial change in lifestyle for my wife and for me. And that was a result of watching a documentary called The Game Changers.
Yes, popular movie out right now.
Yep, and you ought to watch it. It's it's very entertaining, very educational, and it talks about the advantage of a plant-based diet. And it kind of pushed us over the edge. That another documentary, Forks Over Knives, and then a very important book that we read, How Not to Die, and recognizing the importance of what you eat relative to these chronic diseases. It really brings it home, and we've realized that diet really has a huge implication.
It does, yeah.
And to give you an example, I mean, it's not just a theory for me. My cholesterol was 204 and my triglycerides are 135. For a guy my age, not bad. Since going on this plant-based
Right, yeah.
diet, after about 10 weeks or so, my cholesterol is 140 and my
Oh, wow.
triglycerides are 75.
That's awesome.
So
Very good.
things are moving in the
It's
right
working,
direction.
right? Absolutely. So now I heard someone tell me that you've run across the entire United States of America. This man ran coast to coast across the country.
Yeah.
So could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'm trying to make it a short story, but I ran cross country in high school and then across the country later. So this goes back to my buddy David Gilroy, who I met when he did a solo run across the country. And we became friends, and it was at dinner one night, and he was talking about the event, and he said, oh, it's the most amazing thing I've ever done, and I'd love to do it again, but I never want to do it solo. I'd love to do it like if we got 10 guys together, we each ran like 15 miles every day, and made our way across the country. Wouldn't that be cool? I said, yeah, that'd be cool. He said, you want to go? I said, sure.
Yeah.
Well, getting a sponsor was a little difficult. 28 years later, he called me up, still want to go?
Yeah.
And I was like, yep.
Of course, yeah.
So in 2004, we had a team of 10 runners and a support team that included my wife. And we started in San Francisco. And by the way, getting a one-way flight to San Francisco as you're looking out the window and saying, holy crap, I gotta run this thing back.
Yeah.
So we started at SBC Stadium and sort of in front of
Drives
45,000 people. They introduced us, off we went, and headed east, finished at Fenway Park, We raised $50,000 for kids' charities.
Wow.
And had a life experience that was absolutely amazing.
That's cool.
And it's I can assure you, a once
in a
lifetime
experience.
experience.
So I know you're a big skier, as am I. I know we're here at Sugarbush Resort, and this is your home mountain. So besides Sugarbush, where else in the world, if you could ski anywhere, where would you love to ski someday? If you could ski anywhere.
Well, there are lots of places in Europe I'd like to go, but in the United States, my favorite all-time place is actually a pair of mountains because they're next door neighbors.
Okay.
It's Snowbird in Alta.
Snowbird Alta?
Yeah.
Utah.
Yeah. Utah has that Wasatch powder.
Nice.
You pick it up and you go, and it just
That's cool. So speaking of powder skiing, I also know there's a little tidbit of knowledge about Tom is that you went skiing out west. I believe it was at Lake Tahoe, and you skied into the desert.
Yeah. Well,
So
something
how did
that
you find the desert at Lake Tahoe?
I'm sure that's happened to a lot of skiers.
Sure, right. Skiing into the sand.
So I went with my business partner Tim and his
Yeah.
cousin Tom. So Tim, and Tom
you guys are
go out to the mountain on the first day. I'd never been there before, so I don't know the mountain. So we go up the first lift that brings you up mid-mountain. It's a ski patrol guy there, and I said, "So, where's the best place to ski?" Now they had a record amount of snow that year. So they were buried in snow. And it was a spring day. It was beautiful. It was probably 25 degrees at the top of the mountain. Beautiful snow, overlooking Lake Tahoe. It was just spectacular. So he said, go up this next lift. Brought us to the Nevada side. It's on the Nevada-California border. And he said, go through the gates heading to the bowls. Look for gate B. Gate B.
Sure.
I said, we're in.
Yeah.
So off we go through the gate, beautiful bowl, people skiing down, it looks spectacular, but it's not gate B. Tim said, we gotta keep going, so we keep traversing, no gate B, keep traversing, and I keep looking down saying, this is beautiful, we should go down. So we just kept going and going and going, so finally I looked down and there was this bowl, untouched, nobody had skied it.
Gotta hit it.
Nobody
Got
had
it.
gone down this pristine bowl.
Got
How
it.
is it possible nobody would have gone down this?
Leads to the desert.
We're yee-hawing and "Woo, this is
Yeah.
incredible, this is unbelievable." And so we stopped for a second and I looked over my left shoulder and there's this big bridge to my left. And just massive trees and stuff to the right. And I said, Tim, the ski area is to the left. How do we get back? There's this ridge line. And we pretty quickly realized that we were screwed. We were way off piste. And so we kept skiing down looking for a way to get over the ridge line, which was it was huge. So no way we're going to climb over it. And finally we got to a spot where there was a stream we had to cross. So we had to climb down the stream, go through the stream, climb up this other ridge line to a fire road. At this point, we've run out of snow. We're carrying our skis. We got our ski jackets wrapped around us. It's like 70 degrees, and I'm like, "What? We're gonna die out here. We can't. If we call somebody, we can't even tell them where we are. We don't even know what state we're in." So, this is an all-day adventure. We finally walked down to a 2-lane highway. We're walking by cactus. It's like 85 degrees at this point.
Nice.
And we get down the road and we tried thumbing and nobody would pick us up. And Tim was like, well, I don't understand why people aren't picking us up. And I said, well, 3 old guys walking in the desert with skis. I think that might be the reason.
Yeah.
So we did get a taxi to come pick us up. And when the guy picked us up, he was laughing. He said, I've never picked up anybody out here.
Never.
It was 7 miles away from the resort. So
Oh my God.
our one run that day
was
was
it.
a run to the desert. Which
Very cool.
Sure has happened to a lot of other skiers.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been a pleasure, and we're so happy that we could help you out.
Larry, thank you so much. This man's kept me going, and hopefully I won't have to use him too much in the future, but I'm sure I'll be spending lots of time over at off season.
Thank you so much, Tom.
You bet, man.